Everyone has a story. I get them to tell it. Welcome to the Aron Bender Podcast, conversations with media personalities about their personal and professional lives and journeys. Thank you for all your support, not just listening on your favorite platform, but now also watching on YouTube and DB&A TV streaming online at dbandatelevision.tv. It's also on Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV, or another streaming service. That is thanks, by the way, to my guest this episode. After Jim Lanahan and I talked, he's like, hey, I think this show could work for this network I know of. Bam, here we are. Thank you, Jim. Before we get to my conversation with Jim, a little about my story. I'm a widowed dad of two girls who just lost their mom, a grieving husband, a man in recovery trying to reconnect with the world with fresh eyes, faith, and perspective, a college journalism professor, a white guy in a world of injustice, a 20-year broadcast media veteran who had his dream job and then lost it. A year and a half ago, God gave me a gift, an opportunity to stop, step back, and breathe so I could learn about love, vulnerability, forgiveness, grace, self-care, patience, and understanding. Jim Lanahan has produced all kinds of Broadway and other shows. He's a manager, a podcast host, Jim Lanahan and Friends, and a life coach. Jim's also the caregiver for his mom, who suffered a stroke in 2017, and a diabetic who loves his iced coffee.
Oh, Jim, you will never reach perfection talking with that man. Who is that man, Jim? Is he a diabetic? Will he offer you sugars? Oh, no, Jim, no, why? The truth is, are we really jumping right in, Aron?
Yes, I'm recording. Screw it. Let's go.
The truth is, my endocrinologist, who has become very popular with my followers on social media, he's actually kind of attractive, quite frankly. So it's very funny because I have a little crush on him, a little daddy crush, and then he always tells me that I'm a bad diabetic. Like, so it's this almost like negative relationship. Like I'm in a relationship with an abusive daddy because I'm like, I'm doing everything to please you, and he's like, you will never be perfect. Stop trying. And I'm like, but I love you. And he's like, you're doing horrible things. Do not, so it's
you have
a very
to choose
funny
between
thing.
the endocrinologist and your mother's doctor. You have
That
to choose.
was a situation. I was like, Mom, you have to prep me if your doctor basically looks like Michael Duncan from the Green Mile. Like if so that man yesterday, but my mom can have him. My mom can have Green Mile, and I'll stick with my endocrinologist.
I was worried today because, of course, no, wait, what is this? What is this water? What is this? How can I talk to you and you're not sipping on iced coffee? How?
Jim, I do not understand. Here's the thing. Lately, I've been getting so much shit from people in my life about the amount of iced coffee that I drink.
Screw them.
I know, right? But
it's
you want to
your
know the
iced
truth?
coffee.
They're not incorrect, right? Like so I have a large iced coffee in the morning, and then I do a little, like maybe a kicker in the afternoon, an espresso.
Okay.
But I live in the desert now too, so I need to be upping my water. It's 158 degrees today, right? So, I gotta.
I thought
get
you would
my
appreciate
water.
this. The AC just went on for the first time yesterday.
Mm.
We discovered it doesn't work. The upstairs AC does not work. And so just for the last 90 minutes, I've been trying to diagnose. I was up in the attic for the first time in 4 years and all kinds of things. And I've had to call somebody. And I'm like, of course, I'm going to start there with Jim. I need to start there with Jim and his iced coffee. I need him to send me some iced coffee. I didn't have time to prepare for the iced coffee.
Well, a little gift I have today. My AC is running because it's very hot here in the desert, but it's emitting a smell today. So that's super fun. Am I dying? Am I getting Freon poisoning? I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but I'm just gonna,
But at least you're
it.
cooler with it. Now, here's what I suggest is, again, screw the friends, okay, with the air quotes, who say that you're drinking too much iced coffee. Just replace the stories you post about the iced coffee with the water, and then just keep doing whatever you're doing with the iced coffee. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the other thing about it is this. It looks like I drink a lot of iced coffee all day, but quite frankly, I drink one giant iced coffee all day. So it's the Trenta from Starbucks. So you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yes.
it's funny how people think they know things about you from social media, but there's a lot of things out there that I have rolled with because people assume about me. And I'm like, well, it's not harmful. Whatever, it's on brand. And so I just kind of go with it. So like iced coffee is one of the lanes that was very easy for me to steer into and be like, yeah, I'm an iced coffee queen. Let's do it. But at the end of the day, I actually don't drink as much as everybody thinks I do. It's a true story.
Classic Lanahan. Classic.
That's a classic Lanahan. Yeah.
So what are some of the things? We're just going to dive right into it. I was going to have you rank your top 3 iced coffees, but we've decided, we've determined through this that it's really just a lane that you do for the brand. So, what are some things that you don't post on social media, or that people on the other side misconstrue, other than the iced coffee?
Well, I would never want to leave you hanging. So it's Starbucks, then it's Dunkin' Donuts, then it's Tim Hortons. And what are some things that I do
your
in
East
my
Coast holdover, right? The Tim Hortons, because there's
Tim Hortons is really Canadian. And so unless you're north of the border, it's hard to get it. There's Tim Hortons in New York City.
Western New York, Buffalo, probably. There's
and I'm from Albany, New York. So, New York is like my jam. And I lived in the city for 20 years before moving out here. But really, I mean, Dunkin' Donuts is king on the East Coast, of course, So what are some things that people don't know about me because they're off brand? I think I'll be honest with you, Aron. Yesterday, I committed a classic Lanahan for your listeners. A classic Lanahan is something I do. I will compile the perfect meal by really committing and maybe going to 2 or 3 different restaurants and or making substitutions. So yesterday I wanted a certain salad and I wanted a certain French fry and I wanted no drink. I wanted a chocolate frosty, and I pulled through all the necessary restaurants to make that happen. It took me extra time, but I got home, I was happy. And I got the frosty instead of the drink. And that's a classic Lanahan.
I do appreciate, by the way, you did mention chocolate frosty.
Oh, Aron, people who say vanilla frosty should be put in the pasture and just shot. Like when I drive through Wendy's and they go, I was like, yeah, and can I please have a frosty instead of a soda, vanilla or chocolate? Right. How dare you ask me that? Frosties are by definition chocolate. I don't understand like this vanilla frosty situation. It's just gross, it's anyway. So, but truth be told, I also separately for my podcast had to pick up a donut last night. So, to your point,
they had to.
I had to because they were my podcast co-hosts, my family were up my ass about the specific donut that Krispy Kreme just put out this week. And
what was it? What was it? I didn't catch the latest episode. What is?
Well, that's because we haven't talked about it yet.
Oh, okay.
I didn't talk about it on my stories because, again, I'm a diabetic. So if I had a chocolate frosty and a donut, the amount of DMs I would get about it. So, to your point, there's things that just don't go on social media, It's a glazed strawberry donut filled with strawberry filling. And it's like a round donut with a hole in the middle. And I don't know, it must have 900 grams of sugar, but it's the most delicious thing I've ever had in my mouth. It's great. Go ahead, make all the jokes.
No, I can't. It's just here's the thing. This is the danger of watching your stories every day. And I usually, what I like to do is it's a bedtime scroll. It's a bedtime scroll. Let me catch up on Jim's day. Now,
Yeah, so many men take me to bed with them. I appreciate it.
Granted. Today I did catch up on the story. There's only 4 posts because you didn't post until like 10 minutes before we talked today. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, it's it's like 20 to 30 story posts throughout the day, and so actually getting to talk to you and see you live, I fully just expected you to react the way that you react on your story and then just move on to the next story, which is 20 minutes later on a call, or you've just you've just talked to your mom or whatever. It's weird. It's odd.
I'll tell you, every now and then I'll meet a follower. They call themselves, by the way, I feel so arrogant saying this because I really think of them all as my extended family. Like, you know this. You wrote me
Yes.
and I wrote you back in 10 minutes because I
Yes.
truly think of everybody just as you're my friends. They call themselves Lana fans. So the Lana fans, if they come to Palm Springs where I currently live, they will say, I'm going to be in Palm Springs. Could I meet you? And I'll meet them. And they usually spend the first 15 minutes just looking at me. And then I find myself putting on a baby show, like a one-man
Yes.
show. And then I finally just go like, this is weird. Like, I'm going to talk to you like you're my friend now. Like, I have to actually acknowledge it because there is that weird thing, because,
Yes.
and I'm not saying that I'm, I don't think of myself as an influencer, a celebrity. I don't think of myself that way at all. But when you see somebody on a little screen and then you see them in person, that's an adjustment.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
expect some GIFs right now to just pop up right here, and then an ad, and then whoever's next on my thing.
Yeah, like I just morph into a boomerang. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty funny.
How did you end up in Palm Springs? You said you spent what, 20 years in New York City growing up in the Albany area, around Lake. Everybody, look it up on the map.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you do for 20 years in New York City, and why Palm Springs after that?
Yeah, I was in New York City producing Broadway shows, general managing Broadway shows. Every now and then, I would for 2 years, I would pop down to Washington D.C. for a job. But there's a lot of producers outside D.C. Back to New York, but for 20 years, that's what I did. I came to LA because I needed a shift. I needed a paradigm shift. My mom had had the stroke. Everything was upside down. It was 2017. The world just turned upside down. I was in Minneapolis opening a big Broadway tour when she had the stroke. And I had a vacation planned. I had opened the show, I landed in Los Angeles. I was with my best friend, Christine. We were having a day. We were literally at the Glendale Galleria, and I was disconnecting. And I got the call that my mom was having this massive stroke. So, long short, flew back across the country, and life changed almost immediately. I'm an only child. She's not married. And in that next 8 months, I put her in 1, 2, 3, 4 different rehab centers, arranged all of the health, planning, if you will. I was living in New York. I was between Albany and New York twice a week. I sold her house. I got a new job in Los Angeles, and we moved to Los Angeles, and I brought her with me. And she lived with me for a hot minute in LA, and the new job was wonderful. And then pandemic hit, and I thought, okay, so I now have just put my mom in assisted living so that I could get my own place. I got a place by LAX because I travel so much for work. I'm in a shoebox. My mom is an hour north of me, and we're in an international pandemic. It just wasn't great, So Palm Springs has always been my happy place. It's where I came to disconnect when I lived in LA. Never thought in a million years that I could live here. I always thought maybe when I turn 60, then I'll move to Palm Springs and retire,
Yes.
And get one of those 55 and older communities and wear caftans and go to the buffet every day. But pandemic makes you rethink everything in your life, and my company gave up their office, and I said, I'm going to take the leap. And my leaders and my company were very supportive of it. They were like, yeah, go there. In fact, buy a house there. So
Wow.
they're awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. And I'll tell you, I've worked for people in my career in live entertainment who were not so supportive. In fact, it was, if you don't live here, you can't work here, you
If
know?
you're not within a 5-minute train drive or a train ride or walk, or
Mhm.
you're not here within the hour, goodbye.
And, you know, I think pandemic made everybody realize you can still get it done over Zoom, you know. But one of my bosses always lived in Vancouver. He's Canadian. So he was like, yeah, go buy a house, do your thing. And so, boom, I brought my mom out here in December. I moved myself a week later, and it's been the best move for both of us. She is doing really well with the weather here. It's good on arthritis. My shoulders have dropped. It's great.
Take me to that phone call back in 2017 when you learned of your mom's stroke.
It was my birthday. So
Jim.
yeah, I know. So I it was my birthday, and the show, I was launching a giant Broadway musical. It was opening night on my birthday. I was in the lobby of the Pantages Theater in Minneapolis, and my phone rang, and it was a state trooper from New York State. And he said, your mom has been in an accident. She's okay. She's demanding to go home, but she's lost about 20 minutes. She was unconscious. And I found her wandering in the median between two 3-lane highways. Yeah. And he said, listen, I have to like obey her wishes to go home. And the car is on a flatbed, and she's in the flatbed, and they're bringing it all home. But I'm worried about your mother, and I knew I had to call you. So I called her and I said, Ma, what's going on? I don't know. I think I hit a patch of ice, and then I got into the median and it slowed down, and the car has, you know, a dent in the bumper, but I'm fine. I said, okay, are you going to go to urgent care? What are you going to do? I'm fine. I'm fine. And she convinced me she was fine. And I said, all I want for my birthday is for you to go see your GP. She went to the GP the very next day. The GP did not see any stroke symptoms at all, and set her up with a cardio appointment, a neuro appointment, all the appointments, right? So she could get the tests. The next day, she winds up in the emergency room with weakness in the left arm. She had slammed her hand in the car door trying to run an errand. She was bleeding and she couldn't feel it. And she was mid-stroke. And stroke is a funny thing. It's the worst, by the way. Strokes are horrible because it's called evolution of stroke. My mom's stroke started that day when she had that car accident, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And her evolution took 7 days. By the time it was done on day 7, she had lost facility of her left arm, left leg, facial droop, the whole thing. And then it's been 4 years building back, but her arm has not come back at all.
I've never heard of a stroke lasting that long. I've heard of like 3-day heart attacks or something like that. I've never heard of because you always think about, okay, it's hit. You can totally tell the symptoms right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mom is a retired nurse. So she didn't even realize it was happening because it was so slow the way it came on. Now, I'll tell you this, about a year ago, she was in assisted living. She used to live in Thousand Oaks in assisted living. She called me and she said, I'm drooling out of the left side of my mouth. And do I sound different? I said, yeah, you're slurring your words a little bit. She said, I'm going to the ER. And she got the clot buster medication. Boom. So now she's on high alert. But I encourage everybody to go to stroke.org. That's the National Stroke Association's website. You'll see there they have an acronym STOP. And just go look at it, because particularly if you have older people in your life, you can really make a difference if you get them help quickly.
Yeah, I walked in on a colleague in his office mid-stroke. Mid-stroke. I didn't quite know what to make of it because I just walked in, sat down because we were going to meet. And he had a towel up by his face. And I just thought maybe he just came in from working out or just, whatever. And then he was kind of moaning. He was kind of you could tell he was trying to speak. He was trying to say something. And okay, yes, this is, I don't know exactly what this is, probably a stroke, but it's above my pay grade. Let's get some emergency services in here. And it turns out, he was having a massive stroke. And that's why when you say, it was 7-day stroke, I can't imagine, like, well, was he also, for 3, 4, 5 days experiencing symptoms, and only then did it actually present in front of somebody who could actually do something. But he told me, basically, the doctor said, if somebody had not come in, if you had not come in, if whatever the case, likely would have died.
And we're the worst. Guys just ignore symptoms, whether it's a heart attack, a stroke, or some sort of like clotting issue, something that's minor. We ignore, we push through, and you really have to pay attention, particularly over the age of 50, because that's when the shit starts breaking down, So I'm almost there.
I was going to ask, how old are you?
47.
Yeah. See, I would have guessed 34 to 6.
Thank you.
Seriously. And do you feel at 47 the way you thought you would feel at 47? Because I don't feel at 44 the way that I felt younger. Like, oh, when I'm 44, I'm probably going to feel really old. I'm probably going to feel like, do you feel at 47 like what you thought 47 would feel like?
I never thought I'd be 47, to be honest. So,
what do you mean?
Listen, for Aron, breaking news, I was born on the Isle of Gay. So I thought by the time I turned 30, I'm over the hill. So I was living in New York. I was living my life.
I think we found, by the way, the title of this episode. That's one of the hardest things for me to do, is title an episode. I think we found it. Jim Lanahan, born on the Isle of Gay. Boom.
Yeah, I was in New York living my big fat gay life in my 20s, like living life. I used to sleep 3 hours a night. I loved New York in my 20s. And long short, I thought, okay, when I turn 30, I'll move upstate. I'll get a state job and I'll settle back down. And then, I'll get the husband and the kids and the house and the fence. And then you turn 30 and you're like, oh crap, what's going to go on? So like, I never really thought about what I was going to be. I have this old running joke with my best friend that when we were 40, we would get married just for the benefits, because we both knew that if we turned 40, we'd still be single, acting wild. So to answer your question, I never had an expectation. And what I'm surprised about as a 47-year-old is how quickly or rather how slowly I recover now from things like drinking or just staying out till midnight, or,
Midnight. What is midnight?
I know.
Is that when something on the clock says 12? Because I haven't seen that in a long time.
How about yesterday? I went to Costco and I woke up sore this morning. I was like, why am I sore from a trip to Costco?
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I'm hauling too much bottled water or whatever, So, but it's funny how things really do sneak up on you. I run 5Ks and 10Ks. Oh, by the way, there's something I don't talk about a lot on social media, but I've been running every morning lately, and
proud of you. Nice.
Recovery, rough, rough, because my legs are just like, what are you doing? We're not 30 anymore. So.
I started running a couple of months ago for the first time in like 8 or 9 years, and I haven't run in several weeks because I ran too much, too fast, and I hate stretching. I hate stretching unless it's right after a run, because then I know I need to. If I just would stretch 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, life, not just running, life would be better.
Yeah, I know. And where do you live, Aron?
Santa Clarita.
Oh, so, that's my whole thing. I live here now. So I'm like, okay, go outside, go for the walk, stretch, do the things. And I'm more apt to do it now because the weather's nicer. Yeah. But our buddies that live on the East Coast, and half the year it's snowing outside, I was the worst. And that's where I learned my habits. That's why, as a 47-year-old, I don't do any of that stuff.
I have no excuse other than laziness. I'm sorry. That's the excuse. But you have an excuse now, because if you don't get out by 5 a.m., you don't go out.
Yeah.
Palm
True
Springs,
story.
forget about it. I don't know why every July we're out there at one of those Marriott resorts or something like that because my mother-in-law has a timeshare. Why July? Why? Can we just go January 3rd?
She probably
Please?
got a discount for the
Oh,
summer,
it's brutal. It's
Mhm.
brutal. Please just stop. Stop.
Yeah, it's the worst.
When did you, because let's go back to the conversation that we started to have about how guys, we just ignore signs and things like that. What about your diabetes? Was that also where it's like, okay, warning signs, oh shit, I'm at the hospital?
Yeah, everything with me is the most dramatic possible. So picture it. I'm in Chelsea, a neighborhood in Manhattan, New York City. I'm in a rehearsal for a Broadway musical, always just upping the drama at all times. And
You did not, by the way, I'm going to stop you. You did not just go full Sophia. Picture it, Sicily,
yeah,
1947.
picture it. Chelsea Studios. When was it? It was about 2012. So I'm there and my phone rings twice and I don't know the number. And I don't pick up unknown numbers. Yeah. I just don't do it. I get outside to ironically get an iced coffee at my favorite iced coffee place, Gregory's, and my phone rings again. So I pick it up and it's my GP. She goes, "Hi, Mr. Lanahan, it's Dr. blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Hi." And she said, "You were here last week. You gave a blood sample. I wanted to follow up with you." And I said, "Great." She said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in New York City." And she said, "Okay, I might need you to swing by an urgent call." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Your blood glucose level came in at 512.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. Oh, so for people that don't know, you're supposed to be under 140 at all times, right?
Yes.
So I was like, okay. And she said, on top of it all, your kidney and liver enzymes are through the roof. So I'm afraid that your body is shutting down because you've actually had high blood sugar for too long and your body is now reacting to it and your liver is shutting down, which means you won't process sugar, which means you will eventually go into a sugar shock, also known as a coma." I was on 8th Avenue, Aron, and 37th Street. I was like, what the hell do I do with this information? So
did you get the iced coffee?
I got an iced coffee, but I only put milk in it. And I went back upstairs and there's the team working on this show. And they're like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know what to do." And so I actually went home. It was one of the periods where I was living down in Washington, D.C. I got on the train, I went home and got all the blood work done again. And sure enough, I'm a type 2 diabetic. And they immediately put you on metformin and glipizide. And I got it under control.
Terms and medications you've never heard of before.
I went to a nutritionist. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm currently on Ozempic because I can produce my own insulin. So that's the commercial now. Yeah, for real. But I'll tell you, lessons learned. That's when I started running, and I lost 105 pounds that year, and ran the following year 6 half marathons in New York City. So, it takes sometimes a major life event like that to scare the shit out of you. And now I've settled in to my new caregiving lifestyle, which means I care less about myself than I should. I'm always taking care of my mom. But I'm still finding a real balance on the diabetes stuff in particular because it's so important, and I have to be here for her.
And not biking, not swimming, not why running? And had you ever run before on a regular basis?
No, and I've been a chubby kid since I'm 5 years old. So I was always the chubby, and I was always the tallest kid in my class. So everyone knew me as like the big. I can't even tell you like. I go back to my hometown now and they're like, "Big guy," or there's certain friends in my life who literally refer to me as Big Gay Jim. I chose running because I never thought I could do it because I was always a chubby kid. So I went out for a walk a couple of days a week. And then every now and then I would just try jogging. And then I would jog walk. And then I would add in a little run. And next thing you know, you're running a quarter mile, half a mile, mile. And I was 37 years old. So, 10 years ago, my body was in a different place. And boom, on the inside of 2 months, had signed up for my first 5K. And
Nice.
the efficacy that I got from doing that was to me, it was so impressive, because never thought I could run in my entire life. And then boom, I've run a total of probably 14 half marathons now. I never talk about that on social media, but I have a drawer full of medals here. And
they should be on that wall behind you. You've got what looks like maybe some Andy Warhol type artwork behind you. I think that's all your face, though.
It's all
is
my
it
face,
not? Right,
yeah.
it is. Okay, there's a space right next to that. That's a perfect spot to display some medals there.
All my medals, yeah. I should put them up, particularly the half marathons for sure. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, one day I will. I'm still kind of figuring out this space from the move, but yeah, it's something I'm really proud of. And so when I have those moments in life where I'm like, oh my God, like you just keep hitting brick walls and dead ends, I'm like, but you always have those things to look back on. So how much I've accomplished with my mom is a big source of pride. Me and running is a big source of pride. What I've done with my career is a source of pride. I have those things. I bank them.
Rate your level of surprise v pride in those first 3 to 6, maybe 12 months of running. You're like, wow, shit, I'm doing this.
Oh yeah, and I would cry all the time. So I was running in New York a lot with my friend Barbara, and she used to be my boss. And we would order, picture it, New York City, 2003. We would order McDonald's delivery to the office. Like, we were so unhealthy. She was smoking ciggies with her hand out the window because we were on the 19th floor. She didn't want to go down to Times Square. I mean, it was a whole thing. So long, short. Different. Oh my God. Yeah, totally different. So long, short, I would be running with her. She had already run a New York City marathon at that point, changed her life. We would run the longest and I would just cry because I would be like, she's like, okay, so today we're doing 10 miles. I would get to 9.5 and just burst into tears because I was like, I never thought I could do this. Like, it's astounding to me. My first half marathon was the Brooklyn half. And I think it was 2013 or 14. And I got to Coney Island Boardwalk where that race ends. And I burst into tears. And then these people saw me crying and they thought I was struggling. I was crying out of happiness and pride. They thought I was struggling and in pain. There was like 150 people cheering me on at the end of this. And it was just, those astounding moments where you're like, oh, I will never forget that. That's how it usually
is. Do you listen to music while you run?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I love kind of the dark, deep, like I like some Adele. I like some Johnny Cash. God's Gonna Cut You Down and Sunday Morning and yeah. I don't know what it is, but there are some moments wherever I'm running. I used to live in Miami, so I would run there, and the way the breeze would kind of hit you just a little bit, and it just feels like it's a reminder of A, what you can do, but also B, just how small you are in this universe, and yet you can do so much.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, my running music's totally different from yours. But
tell me some of yours. And now I will, by the way, I'll throw in some LMFAO and some others. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, I don't just go out like, all right, everybody, I'm wearing all black, even though I'm going for a run. Let's go. It's not like that. But what are some of your go-to?
Oh, I just listen to whatever trashy dance music is on the charts right now because I just need that pumping beat. You know what I mean? Yes. I just need the go, go, go. So any horrible dance song from now, that's what I call music. Yes, you know what I mean?
Whatever it is, up to 39 or whatever.
Like, and I'm just like,
Great. Now the podcast is going to get flagged for copyright. Thank you. Thank you.
It's hilarious. But yeah, I hear you though. I think that's why running is so good because, to your point, you can experience all the emotions on a run because you're solo. You're with your thoughts mostly, and you're exerting energy often to the point of exhaustion. And how often do you get to do that with yourself? And so the emotions flow out. And it's actually one of the reasons I love running so much.
How many people have you heard from who, like I do, they don't watch the KTLA weekend morning news.
Uh-huh.
They watch you watch the KTLA weekend morning news.
Yes. Yeah. You know,
because that's how I found you. I don't know. I don't know which of the anchors posted your story of that, but I found it hilarious, and I went to your page and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I've become a bit of a, I'm told, Dana Devon, the entertainment reporter, said to me on my podcast, she goes, I just want you to know when you post something, it's called a Lanahan. And everybody in the newsroom will be like, he posted, there's a Lanahan. And everybody will watch it. And it's become this kind of like symbiotic relationship now where they will reference my story on air, and then people will talk to me about it, and then I'll respond to it, and then they will on air respond to the response. They have to be very careful. And I want to say they are total professionals. They're there to do the news, and they do the news. But it's the weekend show, so they have a lot of fun. And it's so interesting how it's developed. I never in a million years thought that I was watching it because it was pandemic. I was home. I was sad. I was sitting alone, and it was on for 6 hours twice a weekend. And I thought, oh, these are fun people. I'll watch this while I'm doing my life. And then I found that I wasn't getting up off the couch. And then I found that I actually really cared for one of the anchors. She's absolutely amazing. And
Lynette Romero. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And she's become a friend of mine, and she's just fantastic human being. And so anyway, it's taken on a life of its own that I never would have thought of. And so the big question is like, Jim, why aren't you on the news? Well, I'm not a news person, but maybe one day they'll do a segment and I get to be on it or something, you know?
Are you going to rig the system so that Kirk does the hometown pride in Palm Springs?
Oh, it'd be amazing. So technically, it's the worst part about Palm Springs for me. Palm Springs is a different TV market, technically.
Yes.
And we have different, my friends, I have news friends here who know that I'm not watching them on the weekends. I watch KTLA, but
Liberty Chan got her one of her starts there in Palm Springs, Christina Pascucci, which I think Liberty replaced Christina, or vice versa, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
A lot of people in LA got their start in Palm Springs.
Casey Montoya was out here for a while. And a lot of producers at KTLA were here. It's really fun to follow news people around the country, actually. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. The other day, Wendy Birch was out here doing a little bit of she does this like California sightseeing segment, and she was 4 miles from me, and I was like, should I just drive over there? Like, should I go be in the cabana with Wendy Birch at the next live hit, Oh
my gosh. And don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. Just have the
Lynette
camera
would
pan
lose
over.
her shit. Yeah.
She would. And I want you to show me right now what you think Mark Mester's face would look like during that live shot.
Oh, he would be like this. Jim Lanahan! Jim Lanahan! Just screaming my name, But yeah, so one of these days,
did you end up going over? I don't remember, because I remember that segment and your story on it, but I don't remember the conclusion of it. Did you end up going over there or no?
Jim, I'm so respectful of their boundaries, and Wendy's one of the ones I don't know that well, and I didn't want to just show up at her work. She brings her kid with her, like that could be weird.
Wendy's a sweetheart. Yeah, she would have loved it. She would have loved it.
Yeah. But one of these times when I was in LA, two visits ago, I was a mile away from Megan Tellis's live shot, and I drove by and she had just left, and I was like, so one of these times it'll happen for sure.
You have had quite a few KTLA people on your podcast in recent months. I've had several on my podcast, different forms of my podcast over the last few years, and I've got Liberty coming up in a few weeks. I want to play for her a message from you.
I would say, hey, Miss Liberty, it's Jim Lanahan. And you know the fashion has left the house ever since Miss Chan left the weekend show. But every now and then we get to see it because she gave some dresses to KC. So I can tell. I know when Liberty's there in spirit. And we just miss her so much. And I wish her the best on her new fancy lifestyle with her gorgeous husband to be. And and Liberty, I will be a flower girl at that wedding. You tell me what I need to do to get in the door. I will do whatever it takes. I'll put on a dress. I'll throw some flowers around. I'll be a cater waiter. It'll be vegan snacks because she doesn't eat meat. So yes. I'll be a vegan cater waiter. Yeah. No, but Liberty's the best. And by the way, one of the few women that I might flip a coin for. Gorgeous. So gorgeous.
I want to ask, so you brought up the vegan thing. Have you thought about going vegan? Have you tried? Yeah, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me. Yeah. Don't look at me like that. No. Even a little bit sometimes.
It's a podcast and I'm speechless. No, I mean, the funny thing about it is, yes,
it's so much easier now than ever before.
Are you vegan?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Full vegan?
Yes, I do have some, like at parties, if I haven't shown up with what I need to eat, I will make some exceptions. But generally speaking, yes. Yes, have been for a few years. My wife first diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017, and so we've been vegan since. She passed away last year, and I still feel better. I lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks I went vegan, 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Yeah.
I didn't know you lost your wife. I'm so sorry to hear that. I have a hard relationship with meat in general. True. Like for me to have meat, it has to be so processed it no longer looks like meat. So if I'm at a restaurant and they have a hamburger, sure. A Salisbury steak option, like at an old school diner, sure.
Chicken fried steak was my go-to for the diner. Yeah.
Never a steak. I'm never going to order a slab of meat, possibly in its own juices. So I'm that close, Aron, to being a vegetarian because I actually am kind of grossed out by the thought of meat. Having said that, when I'm in training mode for half marathons and I'm like the super skinny version of myself, I did find myself really, really craving protein, and it was hard to find anything that kind of satiated that except for just grilled chicken. So I think I'll find a healthier relationship with meat than I'm currently in, particularly when I get myself in a longer race situation and I have to commit to healthier eating. That's when my sugars fall right into place, and then I eat the right kind of meat. Could I substitute a tofu? Could I have other sources of protein? Sure. I have to figure it out for myself.
We've talked several times already about the caregiving situation. How do you make sure that you take care of yourself? Because so much mental and emotional energy the last 4 years, but especially these last few months during the pandemic. How do you make sure that you take care of Jim and not just Jim's mom?
I don't. I've been really bad at it. So the first 2 years almost took me out. I thought between all of the caregiving and everything she needed, it was 2 to 3 appointments a week for about a year. And then it dropped to like 1 to 2 a week. It was so intense. And I was living in another city. And then we moved across the country. I stopped. By the time we got to LA, the reason I came to Palm Springs the first time was I just needed 2 days with my phone off. And I hired somebody to stay with my mom because she was still living with me. And I came out here and I got one phone call from them and I answered it otherwise. And I remember being so tired that when I was lying by the pool out here, my body had a little bit of a like hum, like a shake. I felt stress leaving my body physically. It was intense. Got into therapy, got my diet back on track because I was eating in my car for 2 years. Got running back in there. And just baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. I'm still not great at it though. I am always taking care of her before me. I'm currently over there 3 days a week doing PT. The other 2 days a week, I drive her to external PT because she had a stroke in a location of her brain where if I don't keep pushing her, she will just stop and be bedbound forever. And I don't want that for her. So I'm really bad at it. Having said that, she's in assisted living because I needed the separation and the distance. I had to create space for myself to get back to me. So, there are major things that I've set up in my life that allow me space for myself. And then I sabotage them by starting a podcast, by choosing a career where I work 12-hour days.
I am right there with you.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
It's so dumb. And but at the same time, and I became a life coach this year. So, but at the same time, I thought to myself, the podcast is for me. If it stops being fun, I'll stop doing the podcast. If it gets to be too much work, I will pull back on the podcast. We're taking a break this summer. By the way, that is some exclusive. I haven't said that out loud yet. We're going to take a break this summer. I don't know when this is airing, but I'm telling my podcast family.
Are you kidding me?
This weekend.
I'm gonna put you. Wow, you're actually telling them this week. I'm finding out before
yet.
They are.
That's a true story. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, my producer knows. Hilarious. But it's very much about making choices and giving yourself permission to be a little selfish. So give yourself space and give yourself permission to be selfish. If you're a caregiver, it feels like a selfish act to do you first, but you absolutely have to do it.
Let's go back to something you mentioned about how you push your mom because the stroke was in an area of her brain where if she doesn't get pushed, how much resistance does she give you? Or is she gung-ho as much as she can be given the physical and mental limitations?
Yeah, it's so annoying because she's completely gung-ho. She'll try anything I ask her to, and she feels very safe with me, of course. So like, even if we're mid-walk, I'll say, hey, let's try something different. Let's walk backwards. Let's, sidestep. Okay, great. But then she forgets because of the placement of her stroke. So like, I'll call her today. Today's our day off. And I'll say to her today, did you do your exercises? Oh, I should do exercises today. Like, yeah, you should, lady. And it's so funny how certain things, she calls me every day at the same time. So I'm like, Mom, why, if you can remember to call me every day at the same time, why can't you remember to do exercises every day at the same time?
Yes.
There's lists around her room. I have physical reminders. I have, all sorts of things built in. Hey, when you get your lunch, it comes with a dessert. Yes. How did you earn your dessert? Well, I guess I finished lunch. Okay, so next time you get dessert because you did your exercises. Like, it's all about building in kind of contingencies. It's really difficult though, because when you've had a stroke, it's just, they call it a neglect, and it is hard to overcome the way you're hardwired.
How was your relationship before the stroke, and how did it change after?
Yeah. When I was in my 20s, I was living the life, as I mentioned earlier, and I wanted no part of my mom upstate New York. Like, don't get in the way, Yeah. And there's an interesting phenomena that I think isn't really talked about a lot, about people who come out of the closet when they are in their teenage years or 20s. You reset, right? So you live your whole life.
Okay.
You hit puberty when you're 13, 14. You start dating girls or you start dating boys, right? When you're heterosexual. But when you're gay and you finally come out at 17, 18, that's when that process starts. So you kind of are doing activities that your peers did 4 or 5 years earlier. Right. And so I always call, like, what's your gay year? Like, how old are you in gay years? Because so when I was in my 20s, I was living the life and you could not tell me to slow down. And I did not want my mother to be part of it because I was early on in the gay years. Having said that, I go home And she'd be like asking me questions like, what's going on with work? What's this? What's that? And at the time, thank God, I had a very fabulous job. I was launching Lion King tours. So I was like talking Lion King all day, which she loved. And then she'd be like, are you dating anybody? And I was like this, how dare you ask me about that? It's private. So, meanwhile, you want to know who I'm dating? Look at the cast of Lion King. But anyway,
that's the lion and that's the king.
Yeah. Oh, he's the king, Mom. Okay. So, but yeah, so long short, the relationship was a little bit strained. Ever since the stroke, though, I always joke all the time with my friends on Instagram. I see my mom's vagina twice a week. And once you see your mom's vagina and your mom's boobs, there is no more weirdness. Like, we could talk about anything, And so the stroke in a lot of ways has made us closer again, which is great. I should tell you, Aron, when I was a child, my dad was really abusive. My mom kicked him out. So my mom was my best friend until I moved to New York and needed the separation. But as an adult now, I think this is one of the circles of life. How about that for a Lion King wraparound?
Well done.
I know, right?
You are a professional.
Well, wait until I start singing in Afrikaans in a minute. So, but long short, as we get older, we need our parents more. And thank God I had this silver lining of the stroke is it's made us so much closer. It's bonded us. Purpose.
Does she recognize that? Do you feel like she feels that as well?
Yeah. And she hates it and she loves it. She loves any moment she can get with me. She hates being reliant on other people. That's just who she is as a person. She's really independent and strong-willed. So, she has it. Like she said to me yesterday, thank you for coming to walk with me. Okay. And then the next thought is, I hope I didn't take too much time away from work today. No, that's okay, Mom. Anything for you. And work gets it. Again, I work for the most supportive people. And then the next thing out of her mouth is, I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Like, so my mom just feels every side of that conversation really intensely.
Do you remember how you felt when your mom kicked out your stepdad?
Yeah, my dad.
Dad. Okay, I'm going to ask that again, and we're just going to react as if I never said any of that shit.
I love it.
All right. Do you remember when your mom kicked your dad out and how you felt? How old were you?
I remember it vaguely, Aron. It was December 6th, 1986, and it was 4 p.m. True story. I was in 6th grade. And my mom and dad had a series of really intense fights the weeks leading up to this. One of the fights, my mom grabbed a cast iron skillet and threw it at his head.
Whoa.
I watched my dad hit my mom. I watched my dad be inappropriate with my mom in a sexual way in front of me as a child. He's a bastard. He had it all coming. And he cheated on my mom with a lady from the other side of the village. And my father's family condoned it. I mean, it was just, So when my mom finally got rid of him, it was Independence Day. It was a holiday. And I did not feel any which way about it other than thank God he's gone.
Just relief.
Yeah. And he moved about 7 miles in the next town and had a girlfriend who was 6 years older than me. Crazy. Wow. Yeah, young girl. And half his age at that point. And I used to go visit them and I had fun with her because she was my peer, basically.
She would have been the senior in high school as you're in 6th grade.
I literally think she had just graduated like a year early. She was in jeweler school, if I remember correctly, like a trade school to become a jeweler.
Oh, yes.
But she used to torment him because she knew how much I hated him and she would always like make fun of him about it because all he wanted to be was like, the big man with the smart kid and the successful kid. And everybody thought I was going to play football because I'm a big dude. And I was
you're
like
no. 6'4" or 5, right?
Yeah, 6'4".
Yeah.
And even when I'm like as skinny as I can possibly be, I weigh 240. Like I'm just big, you know? So, so what a weird time. But yeah, him leaving was perfectly fine by me. And over the years, he has reached out to me and I'm like, hey, we can have a relationship. And I am perfectly fine with my life right now. For you to enter that happy place that I have maintained and groomed, I just need to know that we're going to have a respectful relationship. You don't have to apologize for anything because I know you won't, but I need you to acknowledge what happened in the past so we can move forward. And he won't do it. He keeps telling people that I threatened him. I'm like, I didn't threaten you. I'm threatening to you. And there's a difference. So he's just, I don't think he's ever going to get there. At this point, he's probably going to pass away before I see him again.
How do you feel about that?
My mom is really worried about it. My mom is like, you should go see him because if he dies, you're going to go, my God, I wish I had gone. But I'm perfectly okay with it because on 3 separate occasions, I have absolutely tried to say, this is what I need from you if you want to have an adult relationship with me. And he's just not up for it. And so for me, it would be going into an unhealthy place intentionally. And I just don't see the value in that right now, you know?
How'd you get into life coaching?
My life is so crazy. I have a master's in counseling that I always joke like I don't use, but I use every day. And I had always thought, oh my gosh, I should be a life coach. I've always been the mom to my friends at work. For a while, my title was general manager. They called me general momager. I'm just a problem solver naturally. I also see things very clearly, very quickly. I can't tell you how often I'll be in a situation at work where they'll ask me like question, and I'll just answer on the fly. Like, this is what I would do. Boom, 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 boom. 2 weeks later, my one boss always comes back to me and she always says, well, you were right as usual. And, you know, I think it's life and I think it's intuition and I just trust myself. I've been through a lot of shit. I know what can happen if we don't do things a certain way at work. I've been through a lot of shit personally. I've been treated every which way you can imagine. I mean, I grew up gay and chubby. As I mentioned to you before, the parents were not, my mom was great, but my dad was a mess. I mean, I have lived through everything personally. I've had all the emotions. So even when I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I'm so empathic at this point that usually within 5 minutes, like I get it. And then by the end of meeting them 20 minutes later, I'm able to give them some pretty solid advice. So having to the point where people are like, are you psychic? I don't think I'm psychic at all. I think we're all a little bit psychic because we're all connected to this like greater energy, but I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I've just been through it and I'm empathic. So why did I become a life coach? I kind of felt like my whole life just kind of led me there. And people connect with you or they don't. So, you know, everybody contacts me like, how are you getting life coach clients? I am authentically me all the time. They come to me on Instagram and they go, you're a life coach? Yeah. Could I have a session with you? And I give them a free one. And by the end of it, we've identified 6 or 7 things that we can work on together because what I can help you with, Aron, is totally different than what another coach can help you with because it's about connection and relationship, you know, and so I tend to work with a lot of ladies over the age of 35 who are cisgendered hetero ladies. They love the gym, you know, working with a lot of older gay men over the age of 50. And, you know, when you have a shared experience, it's so powerful. I always say this, even if you're not a life coach, you're not a therapist, anytime you can make a little baby connection with someone, make a point to do it. Even if you're just smiling at a stranger once a day, make a point to do it because we're all here to make that connection and make each other's life just a little bit better every day.
As somebody who's grown up with what you grew up with and you've been through what you've been through, it would, if you explain to me like, you know what, I don't trust myself, I don't trust my gut, I don't feel like I'm in tune with anything. I think I would believe that because of what you've been through. How do you feel like you got to the point where, okay, I can trust myself, I can trust my gut and I am my authentic self, even though I've been through all of this, / because I've been through all of this?
It's a really good question. When I was a child, I spent a fair amount of time alone in my own head, and I created a lot. I imagined a lot. And I also, because what was already going on with my dad, I also was so in touch with it that I noticed I had the ability to figure things out before they happened. And I took a lot of pride in that. And at the time, I just thought, Jim, you're smart. You're a smart kid, right? But it's not. It's intuitiveness versus intelligence. And I just learned early on to trust it, trust it, trust it. Now, Aron, there are times in my life when I have turned it off. When I'm living in New York and I'm running 110 miles an hour and, I'm getting up early to do the run, I'm working the day job, I'm meeting someone for a show and drinks after the show. No one is being intuitive. There's too much noise in our head at that time. But when I just slow down and I listen to myself, it's always there for me. And I've just gotten used to just trusting it over time. And then I have friends who are practicing psychics, and they'll say to me, why aren't you developing the gift? I don't think I have a gift, but I treat it like they treat their gifts. You know what I mean? I meditate and I take care of it. And I very much tune into it when I have to, because it makes me stronger when I'm under a great deal of stress, because it makes me a better caregiver for my mom, because. So, I don't know how else to answer that other than it's always just kind of been there. And I don't forget, part B of it is, I don't forget a freaking thing. So every time I learned a life lesson, it's there, it's at the tip of my tongue. And not just what happened, not just the facts, but the feelings, and when something happens at work, good, bad, or ugly, I know how we got through it. And then you think about, okay, most of the time at work, to solve a problem with maybe a producing partner or a director that's hard to work with, it's psychology. And so again, I'm relying again on the emotional and the feelings, and I'm using my personal toolbox and everything that's in it to get through it. So I always think of it like, just create the space, rely on yourself, remember what's in your toolbox. I feel like I gave you a really woo-woo answer, but it's not something I actively developed. It's just something that's always kind of been with me, and I've gotten better at trusting it.
What was life like when you not just turned it off? Okay. Because like you said, you're going 110 miles an hour. You're waking up at 4 a.m. You're not going to sleep until midnight. So you don't have time. There's too much noise. But what about those times when you don't just turn it off? You hear it, but don't listen to it. Like, what about that, either those days or those times in your life?
I mean, some of those times I've been drunk out of my mind, and they're the best days of my life. You know what I mean? I'm on a cruise with my girls and I'm lying in a hammock on a beach in Jamaica. I'm out drinking with my friends at a bar in Manhattan, and I wake up the next morning and I don't know whose apartment I'm in, and I've had the best night ever, and oh my God, I can't wait to go to brunch and share this story. You know what I mean? So a lot of those times you describe, I don't remember. The rest of the time, it feels just inauthentic to me to not be connected to whatever that bigger thing is that I'm here to serve. Like, if I'm working so hard for somebody else's purpose and I'm not doing it in a way that's authentic to me, I've never lasted in that job. And I had a job once, picture it, New York City, 2014. I quit a job working on 2 dream shows that I won't say here, but about a phantom who sings and about some boys from Jersey. So
I won't say the names, but
I quit this job and I went to work for Blue Man Group. And everyone was like, "You're leaving Broadway to go work on that show?" Because that's a little downtown show.
Yeah.
I did not look at it that way at all. I looked at it as I can't stay at this job because I can't do it in a way that feels good every day. I don't feel good about the work.
You walk into the building and you've left Jim outside, and the shell of whoever this is not working.
And I always say it's the toolbox. So to your point, you can't leave Jim outside. You can't leave Aron's toolbox outside. You have to always bring yourself, experiences, knowledge base, all the things. You have to bring it every day to your relationships, to your work, or else what's the point? You know, it reminds me of these ladies that I grew up watching who had state jobs. Every morning they would go up to the parking lot and they would get on the bus that would bring them down to Albany, where they would work their state job from 9 to 5. And then at 4:58, they're running out to get that bus back home. And they hated life. They hated it. They hated what they had to wear to work. I remember this one lady used to wear sneakers and change into heels. She would just complain about the heels. She complained about the pantyhose. They didn't like the work. They used to go outside, and every moment that they could go to the food carts in the park by the state capitol, they relished it because they hated their job. I'm like, why would you do that? Oh, well, I have a state pension. Yeah. I guess life is about sacrifices and choices, but that is never a choice that I was going to make because I could not do that for an entire career.
You're connected enough to energy that you have talked to dead people.
Yeah, I just don't necessarily know what they're saying. It's more feeling to me, but I talk to them all the time. I see ghosts and I will acknowledge them. And then most of the time, like, I will thank them for letting me be in their space because this is their space, right? I moved into this apartment, or I came to this office. However, I also think that if you're really attuned to it, they will talk back to you. Now, I have friends who are mediums who will literally be like, "Oh, your dad's here and he's so excited you're pregnant." I haven't told anyone I'm pregnant. Oh my God, I'm not that, but I can definitely pick up on like, okay, good energy, bad energy, or I know exactly who's with me in my life. If you will, my angels that are my grandparents and a particular great grandma, I know who they are. I think a lot of mediumship is how people made you feel when they were alive, and us keeping them alive through memories of how they made us feel. I think that's a big part of mediumship. Everyone has that ability, even if you can't talk to them. That's a big part of it. And I think everybody should work really hard because when people leave us, they're still very much with us.
Are you here for Spielberg's West Side Story?
Oh, it's a good question. Yes, I'm here for any movie musical. I'm here for it because
at least giving it a chance.
Yeah. And, I grew up a little Poe kid from upstate New York. And we were so poor. My mom would make sure I got the cheap ticket to go sit in the balcony and watch the musicals when the tours came to town, but she couldn't afford it. She would sit in the car and wait. Oh. So I'll tell you, like, yeah, I mean,
she's the sweetest.
You know why I take care of my mom. She gave me the world, and now I feel like I'm repaying. But so anytime a movie comes out and you can go see a movie for 10 or $15 and it's West Side Story or it's Jersey Boys or it's Phantom, I have thoughts about all of these movies and I'm a purist. I think, always go see the live show when you can. However, what it does is it brings this art to people who would never see it otherwise, and it's amazing.
Top 3 stage musicals for me. Top 3 movie musicals.
My favorite stage musical is Les Miserables, the original, because I had never, up until that point, seen perfect collaboration of all departments. So that just got a little producerial, but what I mean by that is The lighting told the story. The costumes moved the story forward. That scenery, that barricade came together, right? It became a character in front of you. Like, when does the scenery become a character?
Right.
I mean, amazing. The score, who doesn't know Les Mis? So that ragtime original Broadway cast, I wept like a baby. I saw it like 17 times.
Wow.
The stars that come out of ragtime original Broadway cast, Audra McDonald, that was her second Tony, I believe. Brian Stokes Mitchell, Marin Mazzie, like it goes on and on. A young Leah Michelle, gorgeous. And then I have to say, there's so many, by the way, but probably The Color Purple, a wood deck, 34 chairs on a wall upstage. And then the rest of it was just these voices telling the story. The revival of Color Purple, starring Cynthia Erivo under the direction of John Doyle, just amazing. And I had the privilege of working on that tour, and it's my proudest achievement ever in my career. The movies, I think the Chicago movie's done really well.
Okay.
Even Renee Zellweger's not too annoying in it, Catherine Zeta-Jones is an unmitigated star. She can do anything. Love the storytelling there. It's pretty good. I think the Hairspray movie is super fun. I don't think Travolta's cast appropriately in it, but it's everything you love about Hairspray on screen, and why not, And then I would say probably Jersey Boys. Again, it's everything you want from Jersey Boys, and what I think it did better than the stage show is give you just the little nuances of why Frankie made the choices he did around his wife and their child, and how much that impacted him when the child passed away. And I hope I don't give it away for people who haven't seen it yet, but in the stage show, it all happens in about 5 minutes. It's hard. You don't have luxury of time and editing on stage.
Right.
But the way they told the story in the movie was just beautiful, I thought.
What are your what are you looking for going into a Spielberg West Side Story? It's got to check some boxes here. It's got to make sure to stay away from these boxes over here.
I want scale. I want that show. I want the movie to feel huge. By the way, I just said show, so let me back up. I want it to be the show on film. I want the choreography to be intact, but I want it to feel huge. I want to feel surrounded by it. So when we're in the top of that movie and the sharks and the jets are coming out and they do that opening sequence, I want to feel like I'm in it, and I hope they do well with singing. My biggest problem with Broadway musicals turned film is that they hire celebrities that can't sing. Like the Les Mis movie was really tragically miscast. Like Russell Crowe can't sing, and so there we are trying to work our way through that movie, and it's distracting. So I hope it's sung beautifully. I hope it's danced beautifully. I have like 12 friends in it. So because it took a lot of Broadway, and all the right people are in it. Which gives you
some hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's face it, even if it's horrible, I'll be like, I'll just watch, Donnie dance, Yeah. So
very cool. Jim, this has been a pleasure. Seriously, like off the charts. Awesome.
Oh, so much fun. By the way, you're such an easy interviewer. Like I could talk to you for 5 days. You're so good at it. That means
so much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true.
That means a lot.
And you've got that like perfect interview voice, Aron, like radio. What did you do before this? Where'd you get that voice?
I did work at KFI here in Los Angeles for 13 years. I worked in other radio stations in Fresno and Miami for 6 years before that. Before I was fired in late of 2019, much deserved. And so I've just tried to put my life back together, and so it basically went. And I do this in the intro to the podcast. So I lost my job in late 2019, and then 2 months later, my wife and I learned that her cancer had returned. 2 months after that, the pandemic took hold. And so I just look at that firing. It was God's gift that basically said, hey, dude, the way you live your life sucks. Let's snap out of it. You get to stay home now. This is your blessing. This is your gift. Do with it what you're supposed to do with it. And so last year I was lucky enough and fortunate and blessed enough to be able to stay home with my wife, taking care of her in what turned out to be her, her last months. And then, I would run school time in the morning, and then she'd wake up around noon, having hopefully slept the night before. And, I would take care of her from noon to 8 or 9 when it was the girls' bedtime. They would go to bed, and then I'd continue taking care of her until she was able to fall asleep. And so it was a blessing. But I spent 20 plus years in radio. Yeah.
I'm thankful that you have the perspective to see the silver linings there, because it's what got me through so much of my mom's stroke rehab. And when you have that perspective, Aron, it really is what keeps you grounded and keeps you going, and so good for you. Yeah, it's amazing.
Head to JimLanahan.com and check out his Instagram at Jim Lanahan. Follow the Aron Bender podcast on your favorite platforms and link to it at AronBender.com. That's also where you can find all my social media. If you have guest ideas or comments, email me at AronBenderMedia@gmail.com. Be well, and thanks for watching.